RevOpsAF, the only podcast for people who are RevOpsAF and want to learn all about things that are RevOps AF.
Our goal is to give the revenue operations community, that includes marketing, sales, and CS, for any of you not paying attention, the skills needed to accelerate their careers.
All right, hello everybody. I am one of your co-hosts, Matthew Volm, CEO and co-founder of RevOps Co-op, and today I am with Ali Rastiello, who is the VP of RevOps over at Health Catalyst. Ali, before we jump into the topic of the day, which is all things ABM and ABX, I want to ask first, just tell us a little bit about your background and how you kind of professionally got to the VP of RevOps role, because I think that's important for setting the stage on this whole topic of ABM and ABX.
Sure. I sort of fell into a marketing role in like 2007 at a tech company. I was totally not qualified for it, but I knew things about the internet, and the VP of marketing was like, she knows the internet. She can talk to the internet people. So I kind of fell into this job after being in a career in advertising and specifically TV advertising. And I cut my teeth at a small company where I kind of had hands on everything. So I really learned, technologies. I brought in Marketo. Marketo was like maybe 2 years old at the time when I first implemented it. Did websites, built websites from scratch and overhauled websites. And on top of that was like writing content and I was doing all the things. And I really loved the tactical aspect of marketing. I don't think I had quite connected the dots like business to marketing yet. And then I kind of went to a bigger company and still had a marketing role, like a marketing campaign manager type role. And while I was there, I just kept being frustrated with the operations because our data was not great, our systems weren't great, and I could see that we really needed to improve that in order for me to be successful as a marketer and for everyone else to be. And so I just kind of got promoted and made that switch to an operations role there, and then started, growing my team and went a few other places as director of marketing operations. And then when this role came up, I knew my next step, because I was such an operations guru, was to own the whole life cycle. I was really frustrated by the fact that I didn't own a stake in Salesforce or in all of these other systems that were connected to mine. And so I was beholden to these other teams, and I wanted a job where I could be the sole architect and owner. And here I am.
I love it. That's awesome. And so maybe, so with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about ABM and ABX specifically. So first off, tell us, in your own words, what is it? What is ABM? What is ABX? And why is it such a good reason for having a centralized RevOps function, especially for someone like you that's come from the marketing ops side of things?
Yeah. In my definition of ABM/ABX/ whatever you want to call it, is that we are aligning campaigns and messaging to the right buyer and right buyer persona. So it's about engaging the entire buying unit and thinking about that as you're developing all of your content. And on the sales side, it's also a combination sales and marketing motion. It can't just be marketing doing that. It has to be in conjunction with sales so that you're coming at it from two angles, right? You've got the air cover and the messaging and the experience that marketing is providing, but you've got the same message resonating with the same target audience, and especially using that intent piece to inform who your target audiences should be, or who your target account list, may evolve into. And when you're both sides of the house are going after the same targets with the same message, you just have such a more unified experience for that prospect or that prospect account that that to me is what ABM is. That was the core of what it was meant to be. I think a lot of people assume it's this intense personalization where you come to a website and it's hi, Ali, how are you today? And that's one, creepy, and two, not really what it is. It's mostly about engaging that buying unit at the right time when they are, in the market for what you're offering.
Yeah, and I think the piece that's critically important there that maybe a lot it can be missed even if you look at this like solely account-based marketing or ABM. It's kind of in the name, right? It's account-based marketing. What you just brought up, maybe why ABX is a better term, is account-based marketing is one side of it, but account-based selling is the other side of it, and you need to make sure those two things are aligned. And when it comes to alignment and handoffs between teams, regardless of what it is, in this case, we're talking about account-based marketing and selling, that is the job of revenue operations, right? At least that's one key piece of the role. And I think why it's important to look at this as, like I said, a great reason why ABX is a great reason for a centralized RevOps function.
Yeah. For us, the big thing is how do we, one, align marketing and sales in a strong way that makes sense for our buyers? Because we were kind of struggling a little bit there with getting everybody on the same page, doing the same thing. So this was one way that I could almost be a forcing function. I also was like, I'm going to buy the tool as the RevOps person so that it doesn't sit in marketing and get isolated a little bit from, the sales aspect of it. And so that we can roll it out as a unified front for both teams. So how does this impact sales? How does this impact marketing? And what are we doing together? It just becomes more of a forcing function at that point to align what both sides are doing when that centralized team is really running the process.
Yeah, makes sense. And so it sounds like you've probably got experiences on, I guess, maybe both sides of the house in terms of seeing what a maybe a divided or siloed kind of ABM slash account-based selling motion can look like, then what results you can see when you actually align those things. What are some of the differences? Like, what have you seen in terms of outcomes that have been driven? Like, what are some things that folks might be experiencing today that can tell them they have a alignment problem there? And then what are, some of the potential results, outcomes they can see if they're able to make progress, right? To drive things in the right direction, to do things on a unified front, like you mentioned.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for me is when the two teams aren't aligned, you've got marketing creating campaigns and messaging that sales doesn't resonate with the way that sales is talking to the buyer and what sales views as maybe the best approach or the problem that they're solving or how they're even framing the message for the buyer itself and like how we're selling things. So that to me is the big one. You've got marketing doing over here, doing great arts and crafts work that sales can't actually close. And so by doing this and saying, okay, this is we're gonna rely on this intent data to help us locate who's in market for what we're selling, so that we can both say, these are the accounts that we're focusing on for this quarter, this month, whatever your sales cycle really dictates. And then you go after it with the same messaging and the same timing. And it's about the entire experience you're creating for that buyer versus this siloed, like marketing saying this, and then a handoff happens, and maybe like the technicalities of the handoff are great, but when the salesperson gets that lead or that buyer person, they don't know what marketing's been saying to them, so it feels very fractured. And the buyer could be like, I think that marketing told me that today we should be buying fuzzy bunnies, and you're over here telling me that I should be looking at big great dogs. Like, I don't know, like it's very different and fractured, and that buyer's like, something's not going on here, and I don't trust this company anymore. So I think the outcomes end up, you get stronger pipeline, you get way more engaged leads and leads that are more educated, and it really truncates that sales cycle.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the how and how you get there. So I've seen some cases, right, where, like you said, let's say like the messaging piece of this, like marketing is responsible for like the copy, right, writing stuff, and like, and then sales, like sales might get some of that, and then they just like either ignore it or they just like write their own stuff because they think they know how to do it better. So in this whole process, who should typically own what, and who should be the ultimate like kind of orchestrator of it? Like, should RevOps be the one driving this whole process and basically like making sure that the right people are doing the right things, and then all this stuff is getting done? And then where do, again, marketing, sales, like where does their input and stuff kind of fit in to this process?
I think that marketing is ultimately responsible for the messaging with inputs from sales. So you have to have them aligned and at the table when the messaging is getting created, so that it is more of a collaborative effort and not just marketing on their side of the house thinking this is what, in the sales process, this is what the client cares about. I think it has to be that joint effort. And then RevOps comes in and identifies the people and puts the processes in place for how we bring these accounts in, how we identify the buyers within the account, how we notify sales when somebody's showing intent, how we automate pushing people into campaigns from the intent when they bubble up from intent and inside an ABX platform. That's really where marketing I think RevOps actually comes to the table and orchestrates all of this, right? It's like we are mission control of how people get into the right messaging tracks, and how sales activates on knowing one of their accounts is showing intent in market. Like that's where we shine, because if you leave it up to say a digital marketing team owns your ABM platform, they typically work on the website and in digital marketing, and they don't really interact with sales that much.
Yeah.
Usually you have a field marketing or a demand team that is more interactive with your sales team. And so if they're running everything and they're putting in the right keywords and sort of orchestrating all of the stuff, you have this real disconnect with like even your field marketing or definitely your sales team. So when you've got the RevOps people in the middle of it, really doing the orchestration and just saying, marketing, I need messaging from you. I need message tracks in Marketo with these 3 personas in mind for this product. These are the segmentations that we're going to go after based on some collaboration with the sales and marketing team together. We have 3 segments. I need, nurture tracks. I need ad campaigns. We want to promote this product, this message. That's what I need you to go do. We then put all the processes in place that people, get put into those campaigns as they start bubbling up and as we start seeing the intent piece of the ABM platforms really come to fruition. And then we are the ones that are setting up alerts, setting up tracking for sales, making sure that they're following up with accounts that are showing intent with the same messaging that we've all agreed on, and how we have those segmentations working. So I see this as like, we're the maestro, and then we've got this great band of people playing, and we're just saying, now marketing, this is your turn to go in and do this. Now sales, this is your turn. You go in and do this. So that it's still the same motion. It still feels like the same message. But we're sort of mission control of how people get in and out of those campaigns and those sales processes.
Yeah, makes sense. What is maybe the most common pitfall or mistake that RevOps practitioners can make when it comes to ABX?
I think the most common pitfalls is going to always be that you haven't engaged the right people within the marketing and sales teams to be part of the process of implementation and part of the ongoing feedback loop and direction that you're taking with the data that you feed into the ABM platform. Making sure you have the right keywords, making sure you have the right segmentation, making sure you're looking at the right products that we care about right now as in terms of like what we're selling as a company. If we are sort of isolated from that, then that's a huge pitfall, because your platform is not going to be aligned with what your overall company strategy is or go-to-market strategy is. So I would highly recommend almost like a tiger team of people from marketing and sales that work together to really identify and define what the core data that you're feeding in and all the inputs are, so that you have the right outputs coming out once you start, really diving into intent data.
Where, in your experience, where do you typically get the most bang for your buck in terms of like opportunities where whether it's like quick wins or things where there's problems that could typically be, I won't say easier because nothing's easy, but like quicker to solve, that could produce a high impact?
I think when going after this, like especially in the beginning, the biggest thing that you could do on the sales side, because sales has so many things coming at them all at once, especially like in our org, we were, we put in CPQ last year. We've got all these process changes. We changed strategy a couple of times in the last couple of years. So they're constantly absorbing new things. And that if you are like, hey, now we're going to send you intent alerts. What? Now you know how to go activate on that. Here's 87 things you should think about. Like they're just not, it's going to glaze right over, right? I think finding those people in your organization, your sales org, that are really excited about this and want to pilot it and want to help you figure out maybe like what is working or not working, starting small with them, and then having them be the champions to help you roll it out to the rest of the team with saying, we did this, we were in this pilot for 2 months with Ali, and my pipeline has grown X amount because we were really digging into these use cases, and this is how we followed up on them. Like, to me, that's the easiest way to really get your sales team activated on this, because marketing can do all this beautiful stuff and orchestrate all this great things. But if your sales team isn't going to follow up or buy into it, then you have like a really big problem. And to me, getting my salespeople on board to do and believe in some of these programs is a challenge. So just starting with that, like excited 5 or 6 people that are like going to really help you champion it. Awesome. Marketing is usually a more excited about change and embracing new technologies and doing things like that.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to, again, because it kind of started with account-based marketing, right? Like I think the marketing team is generally going to be less resistant, maybe not resistant at all to that stuff. But it's like a lot of things. It's like the last mile is where things get really hard. And what you're describing is like you need, like ABX is marketing and sales combined. That's how you can produce the best outcomes. So you can't necessarily have one without the other in terms of doing it well. And where you can typically get the biggest bang for your buck, or where there's the most opportunity, is finding those champions on the sales side. And to your point, regardless of how big your sales team is, if you're going to be deploying this sort of ABX strategy, like there's always at least one person on the sales team who is down for stuff like this, right? Like there's always one. Now, you're definitely not always going to have all of them, right? Like there's stereotypes for a reason. There are like the salespeople like you kind of described, where it's like, my dear God, like don't give me another thing that I need to like.
Why do I have to manage my stuff in Salesforce? I still
exactly. Like, like ABC, always be closing. Like I'm a closer. I just go out and I build relationships and I get deals done and contracts get signed. Like that's all that should matter, right?
Yeah.
But you always have, but you always have at least like the one rep, right? Who is like, always trying to find ways that they can get ahead, right? And like, do better than their peers or like get some sort of competitive advantage, right? And so like find those people and get them on your team, because if they can do well and help you champion this stuff, like that'll make it a much easier sell
Yeah.
to the rest of the.
Especially the ones that love technology and are really into using technology to make themselves better, in terms of selling and in life. Like you find those salespeople that live and die by their smartphone and like all the weird apps that nobody's heard of that help them manage their lives better, then you'll find somebody that is really interested in how technologies can help them be a better seller. I think those are the ones that are really key to like get into your little tiger teams.
Yeah, yeah. And then my last question for you before I kind of let you go, shifting gears, I guess, just a little bit. We talked about your progression through marketing ops into a VP of RevOps role. We've talked a lot about specifics around ABX and how RevOps can be an orchestrator there. There's obviously a lot of technical like abilities assigned with this. So how can you make sure as a revenue operator, whether it's with ABM, ABX, or anything else in your role, that you're viewed as truly a strategic asset to the team and not someone who's just there to like implement or deploy technology and like click some buttons and do things on the back end? How can you make sure, like you said, that they're truly the orchestrator, the maestro, right? Kind of waving
Maestros.
the little wand and calling on all the people. I've got all that stuff in my head. Yeah.
I I always train my teams to think of us as consultants. Like we are not, I talk to my teams like when we go into a meeting with sales or marketing, doesn't matter who it is, we should be viewed as consulting them because they're always going to have 87 ideas and not all of them are the right ones or great ones. But how we position what we recommend and what we've seen in the past and how we consult them versus just saying, what do you want? And being an order taker, that's the game changer in my mind. As soon as you can come into an organization and help make that transition from like your ops team was just doing what I'm asking them to do versus your ops team is now consulting me and telling me the best way to do something. That's where you make that flip to strategic. And I've done it at a couple of different companies where, I walked in and they had an email marketing team. And that just meant that they sent the emails out. That did not mean anything else. They weren't rating anything. They were just basically managing Marketo. And I turned those teams into marketing operations teams that had really strategic alignment on how we execute campaigns. And they were brought in before anything was launched, like in the kickoff meetings, so that they are like in understanding what the ideas are. And then they can say, this is how we're going to orchestrate this to get exactly what you want out of it. Like people wouldn't do anything without talking to us first. That's when you kind of made that change. And it's an evolution. And all of a sudden it kind of just is like you wake up one day and you're like, on that other side, they're calling us now and asking our opinion and making sure that, our voice is heard before they just try to go do something. And it's the same thing on the sales side, right? The sales side, they have lots of ideas about ways to do outreach or tracking or reporting. And now, when you can come in and say, that sounds great, but this is what I would recommend. And this is the way we're going to package it up and give it to you. And they're like, oh, and it's completely different than what they've asked for. I definitely, see that as the change in the tide. And I push my teams to always be like, how about don't come to me with a solution, come to me with the problem you're trying to solve. And so they usually just go, I hear you, but like what's the problem we're really trying to get at? So we kind of frame it that way to make that transition.
Yeah, it's easy to start with the solution and then kind of work backwards, but that's not the right way to do things. Like you said, always start with the problem, right? Someone typically skips over that when they do start asking you for things, right? It's like, oh, hey, I need this new tool deployed. I need this integration built. I need this field added to Salesforce, right? And you're like, well, before we get there, like, let's just talk about like why. Like, what are you trying to accomplish or solve with, insert, right?
Yeah.
This new field, this new tool, this integration, this other thing. And yeah, try to tease that stuff out. And just asking questions like that can get you a very, very far away.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
To me, that's the key right there, is when you just start coming in and showing that you're more than just the order taker. You can explain to them the best ways to execute something, or to think about, or strategically think about a problem. 9 times out of 10, I mean, it's usually a short transition once you start showing that value.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Ali, thank you very much for joining us today. Also, thank you for being a speaker at RevOpsAF The conference last year in 2024. And spoiler alert, Ali is going to be speaking again at RevOpsAF 5. Not going to tell you right now where, everyone who's listening, where the conference is going to be, but we will be announcing it very, very soon. And you'll be able to see folks like Ali and a lot of other incredible speakers there as well. So mark your calendars, May 2025. All right, that's the plan. But Ali, thank you very much as always. It was a joy talking to you. And
anytime. I love nerding out on this stuff. So thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode, everybody.
For more great content like this, join our community at RevOpsCoop.com and check out the links provided in the show notes.
Keep it RevOps safe, y'all.